So you clicked on this video because you want to start making music but aren't sure what gear to get, or you've been doing this for a little while and want to look at possible upgrade options. Well, let's just jump straight into it. Sorry, I lied. There are 4 things I want to discuss before talking about any gear. First things first, I want to engrave this idea of how I want you to think about the money you spend on gear. Now, I'm using the word gear as a very broad term here. Gear can be anything tangible, your computer, your interface, your headphones, to an instrument, to something intangible like software, whether that be your DAW or plugins. Now, I want this formula engraved into your brain, and that's that the more money you spend on gear does not equal better results. You could argue that the better gear can lead to your desired results in fewer steps, but at the end of the day, remember that good music makes good music, great music makes great music, great gear can make shit music, right? You could put Max Verstappen into a Type R, and then you put a normal person into an F1 car, chances are the normal person is gonna fucking kill himself. Next, I want to talk about where to buy gear and the whole topic of new versus new. To make comparisons easier, I'll refer to products based on their new MSRP prices. This way, comparing product A to product B to C is pretty straightforward. Now, I'm not against buying used gear at all. Matter of fact, I recommend you buy used gear, which is where you're going to save most of your money. The beautiful thing about this hobby or profession, if you plan to take it seriously, is that there's a lot of options in the second-hand market. Now, when it comes to where to buy gear, if you decide to buy from big retail companies like Amazon or Guitar Center, I choose neither, especially Guitar Center. Fuck Guitar Center. I'd go with Sweetwater. I'm not sponsored by them. Hopefully one day I am. Okay, I'm fucking stupid. But the reason as to why is that Sweetwater has the best customer service ever. You could order fucking 3 picks that cost fucking $1, and they're gonna call you and be like, hey, you want sauce with those fucking picks? And they'll make it happen if you say yes for some reason. Sweetwater is just awesome. Okay, their customer service awesome. This is really, really helpful if you're a beginner. They have these dedicated sales engineers who claim to have decades of experience who can help you set up your products. You can ask them questions anytime. The only downside to Sweetwater is that their shipping can take a while, depending where you are, and they only work during business days. The same thing goes for their sales engineers. Now, if you are going the used route, however, you can look at Marketplace, OfferUp, eBay, but the main go-to website is Reverb for any music gear. Now, there's 2 paths in this video. Path A, the bare minimum equipment you need, and path B, the more complete home studio guide. These are things that at some point you're going to need as you progress onto your music journey. Finally, I encourage you to do your own research. I spent hours going on forums, watching videos, and just refreshing my memory on a couple of things, but you should still seek more than one opinion on anything, really. Okay, I yapped a lot, so I'm going to try to speed run through all of this. The most important thing and where I spend most of my money is the computer.
Oh, you see this guy? See this guy? Number 1 bullshit guy. He do the wheel.
Now, when it comes to choosing a computer, there's 2 main parts you need to look at. That's the CPU and RAM. If that sounds like enchantment table to you, I'll try to explain it as best as I can. If you're going to buy a computer, they usually tell you what CPU it has. If you're going the non-Apple route, make sure you at least get an Intel Core i5. The AMD equivalent is the AMD Ryzen 5 series. Now, this is for those strictly on a super tight budget. However, I recommend at least an i7, AMD Ryzen 7. But a step above that and the top of the notch is the Intel Core i9, AMD Ryzen 9. Now, if you're going the Apple route, try to get an M series chip that's at least a Pro or Max. These chips are super efficient and powerful, and this is the computer I recommend since they're just simply the best. Even the first generation of M series chips, the M1 Pro, M1 Max, can still be stupid viable as of the recording of this video. In terms of RAM, it's pretty simple and straightforward. The more RAM, the better. The absolute standard as of 2025, however, is 16 gigabytes of RAM. However, software is and will only get more demanding, so 32 gigabytes is what most would consider suitable for professional sessions. Now, why would you want a better CPU or more RAM? In simple terms, the better the components are, the better your computer will be at handling larger, more complex projects, multitasking, and the more future-proof it'll be. In terms of future-proofing though, don't try to sweat it too much. Next up is the DAW. This is where the magic happens. It's where you're going to be making your beats, recording your music, and constantly start projects up, then promising yourself you're going to finish them later. Anyways, if you're going the Apple route, then Logic Pro X priced at $200 is the best deal you can get. Logic is the only DAW where there's no features behind a paywall. In other words, enticing you to upgrade to a slightly more expensive option or edition, which is kind of crazy since Apple is kind of known for that. Now, some highlights about Logic is that it has powerful tools and assistants like the drummer and a big pool of royalty-free loops and effects. Another good thing about Logic is that a lot of the stock sounds sound great, which is good since you don't have to dive into the rabbit hole of plugins right now, and it's good for film scoring. It's also the best bang for your buck compared to other DAWs. After Logic, it's a bit of biasy. It's my baby, Ableton. Now let's name the elephant in the room, Greg. Hi, Greg. In all seriousness, Ableton has some flaws. To start off, it's one of the most expensive out of all the others, with my recommended edition being the standard version, coming in at whoppity $440. That's like 2 bitches after the row. Another bad thing about Ableton is that you have to pay $120 for every major update, which fucking sucks. However, Ableton is hands down the best for workflow. Yes, you can achieve great workflow in any DAW with time, but Ableton takes it a step further. Essentially, you can make Ableton this special tailored suit for specific wants and needs with custom templates, presets, custom keybinds, and many more things. Next up, the only DAW I haven't personally used but plan on buying is Cubase. And this is honestly the DAW I would push someone towards. But the recommended edition being the artist license, costing $330 or $250 during sales. It has similar specs to Ableton's standard edition. However, the physical inputs have been limited to 32 compared to Ableton's 256. That may not really matter if you're just starting, but something worth noting. Nonetheless, it is still a great DAW and could be the only DAW you ever have to purchase. Now, you can list out the DAWs with other industry's golden boy, and that's Pro Tools. There's really not much to say. It's not mainly used for music production, although you can use it for that. It's mainly used for vocal recording and or mixing. The recommended edition being their studio version, which is still pretty expensive, since you can either purchase a subscription license for $300 a year or $600 perpetually. In other words, forever. Last but not least, some of you fiends have been twitching since I haven't mentioned it yet, and that's FL Studio. The recommended edition being $180. However, if you plan to score film, I believe you have to spend $270 in order to have a video playback singing feature. Don't quote me on that. But some good things about FL is that it has a go-to-step sequencer. It's cheaper than the others mentioned, at least the recommended edition, and it comes with lifetime free updates, which is a pretty fucking good, big, massive dub. Now, some of the bad things, however, and why I didn't go back to it, is that it's notoriously known for being tedious to work with. There's always some type of extra workaround when trying to do something. For example, they're sampling audio in their whole make unique mess, automation, sense returns, etc. I believe they kind of fixed some of these issues in the current version. I'm not too sure though. However, when it comes to FL, there's extra steps you have to do to reach to your desired outcome compared to all the other DAWs. But at the end of the day, if you already have a DAW, stick to it, right? And just learn how to use the tools that you have. Master them, hate them, make love to them. It's you who tells the program what to do. The next piece of equipment and the last piece of equipment you need, at least when it comes to the bare minimum setup, is headphones. Now, here's my hot take. You don't need to spend thousands of dollars. You can achieve good to great mixes with any pair of headphones, at least the ones targeted for studio use. We won't be getting into consumer popular options like Beats or Apples. Those are obviously made for the sole purpose to please what an average person considers a good listening experience. Okay, for solid options without breaking the bank too much, there are 3 picks: 2 closed back headphones, 1 open back. What's the difference between open back headphones and closed back headphones? It's not just their appearance, but also their listening experience. Closed back headphones provide better noise isolation, making them more suitable for recording vocals. They often have a stronger bass response, but they could also fatigue your ears faster. Open back headphones have open ear cups, which result in having a wider soundstage, which can help achieve a less in the head listening experience that ultimately also translates to the way you approach a mix. They have a more natural sound, however, they are not suitable for noisy environments or recording sessions as they let outside sound in, but open backs are typically used for mixing and mastering purposes. For closed back options, we have the ATH M50X or the M40X. I believe the M40X are flatter than M50X and cheaper, so M40X. These are solid all-around headphones, and you can't beat the price, at least when it comes to new MSRP. If you have an extra $50 to spend, however, and you're looking for closed back options, I go for the DT7070 Pros, which comes in at $200. Now, they aren't as flat as the M40X. The 77 have a bit of a boost on their high end, but at least what feels good in my head, they feel more comfortable and they feel more durable. Okay, when it comes to open back headphones, there's really only one that comes to mind, and for good reason. These are the HD6XX, coming in at $200. These have been praised for providing a clear, natural sound and being really comfortable at a really good value. They are modeled after the HD650 that costs $500. What's the difference? Shocker, there's really not much of a difference. Their hardware and drivers are the same, so in other words, they sound identical. Before closing this section, I want to talk about amplifiers. In my opinion, you don't need to spend more money on an amplifier. That's unless you've experienced one too many glory holes. Then by all means. Now, I'll leave this video or whatever it is on the screen by Critical explaining what an amp is. If you really need an amp, it's really worth a watch. I recommend it. Okay, so that's it for the bare minimum equipment you need to start making beats. But if you plan on recording anything at all, then keep watching. So I want to get this category out of the way, but just to clarify, it's not a necessity like the other equipment following shortly. And I'm talking about a Midi keyboard. My argument is, if you get to know the keys and at least play chords and some theory along the way, your workflow will improve drastically. There's no specific keyboard I recommend. They all come in different sizes, from small with a good personality, a good sense of humor, to decently big. They also come with different Mickey Mouses, pads, track faders, RGB, etc. Now, before talking about any interfaces, mics, or studio monitors, it's important to talk about room treatment. Unfortunately, there's no workaround to room treatment if you plan to record. An untreated room will lead to messy recordings that would just make everything more tedious and more technical to work with. However, there's different DIY ways you can help treat your room. You can have carpets, you can have filled bookshelves, thick curtains, cushions, beds, sealing your windows or doors. You can make your own DIY panels, which I recommend since it'll save you a lot of money, unless you need to buy the power tools, and then I digress. You could put a little couch on the wall. You could have your wife in the room while you mix. I may have made up those last two, but you can do any of these things before buying actual panels or diffusers. Now, there's no need to get a measuring tool and overcomplicate things. Just take into consideration how sound reflects off the wall and which are important to deal with. Those in order of importance kinda are the side walls, behind the speakers, the rear wall, which is behind you, corners, which are dealt with things called bass straps, ceilings, and floors. Keep in mind that for the rear wall and ceiling, you typically use a diffuser, and for the other walls, an acoustic panel or a combination of both. The difference between them is that a regular panel helps absorb frequencies while the diffuser helps spread out sound more evenly. Now, for those wondering, those foam cubes that you used to see in every YouTuber's room back in 2016, they aren't as effective as actual acoustic panels. Yes, they help absorb some of the high frequencies and help with the echo in the room, but not enough for substantial room treatment. Now, this piece of equipment you need, for the most part, in order to start recording into your DAW, and that's the interface. In this video, there's a couple, so let's just dive right in. The cheapest is the Volt 1, coming in at $140. Now, I choose this over the Scarlett Solo for a couple reasons. For one, it has a better build quality, at least in my opinion. And two, it has a cool vintage button. It essentially adds harmonic saturation to the signal, or as people like to say, it adds color. It has MIDI I/O, unlike the Solo, and it comes bundled with some UAD plugins, which are arguably better than the ones that the Scarlett comes with. Moving up to slightly pricier interfaces, these will start having 2 inputs, or in some cases more, kinda. To start off, it's a bit of a jump in price, but it can definitely be an endgame interface. You could use this interface until you decide to spend more than like $1,500 really. And that's the Audient Audio ID24. It costs $500. The conversion is top tier, the preamps are top tier, the headphone amp is good. It has ADATs, I's, and O's, so you can expand your setup even further. Now, if you're someone who likes to go big and doesn't like going home due to family problems, then I have two options for you. To start off, it's the ID44. It comes in at just $800. It has the same top tier conversion, top tier preamps, but it comes with more ADATs, ins, and outs, and 2 additional instrument inputs and preamp inputs. The Apollo 2X also starts at $800 and gets more expensive depending if you get it with certain plugins or not. Now between these two, I would choose the ID44 even if I have an Apollo myself. There's a couple reasons as to why. For one, the ID44 produces a more clean sound. This could be a deal breaker for you, maybe not, right? The Apollo tends to color the sound a bit. Number two, which can be a deal breaker for a lot of people, you can bypass the preamps on the ID44, which is helpful once you get outboard gear. Number three, it has ADAT in and out, while the Apollo only has ADAT in. Number four, it comes with more pre's. However, something cool to mention about the Apollo though is that it has onboard DSP, which you probably heard it by now, right? DSP essentially means that the interface itself can process plugins. In other words, it helps the CPU process less things and focus on other tasks while the interface handles the plugins. However, when I say plugins, I only mean UAD plugins, which can be pretty pricey. Now you chose an interface, the next thing you need to record is a mic. To start off, I would avoid using USB mics. They tend to have more latency, especially the more budget-friendly ones. In terms of mics that you should pick, again, stay away from USB mics. There's a few. Now, there's one dynamic mic in this list. If you've been making music for a while, you could probably take a random guess and hit the lottery, right? And the others are condensers. The biggest difference between a dynamic mic and a condenser is how sensitive one is to the other. Dynamic mics aren't as sensitive as condensers, so you can record higher input levels without distorting signal, or most importantly, without damaging your mic. However, the downside to the dynamic mics is that you can't get the clarity you get from a condenser, aka you can't get the shimmery top end that makes the recording sound bright or crisp at times. For that reason, many of modern vocals are recorded on a condenser. To start off with the more budget-friendly options, the dynamic mic I chose is the SM57. I have one somewhere outside. It comes in at $100, and honestly, this is the mic you can and will go back to even if you upgrade mics in the future. The reason as to why is that this mic is one of the most versatile mics ever made. You can record drums, vocals, guitars, and fucking fart sounds. The good thing about dynamic mics is that they can be more forgiving when recording on an untreated room. Side note, you silly goose, you should still treat your room, even if you get a dynamic mic. For a budget-friendly condenser mic, I chose the Lewitt 240. Some argue that it adds too much brightness, but there's really not much to say other than it's a solid entry-level mic for $150. Before talking about the last two mics, I want to talk about the previous mics. I use the term budget-friendly. Now, in this case, when it comes to this section, that doesn't mean shit mic they use for now, right? This is one of the categories where you could get great results with the less expensive gear. I mean, Billie Eilish recorded some of the songs from Where We Fall Asleep, Where We Go with an AT2020, so goes to show. Now, jumping into slightly more expensive options. To start off, I'm choosing the LA220, which comes in at $330. It has better build quality than the Lewitt, and in general, you can't go wrong with anything Lauding Audio makes. Now, again, I'm not a Lauding Audio fanboy, but if you really want a tube mic for under $1,000 that can carry you until you decide to spend over like $3,000 on a mic, then the LA320 coming in at $700. Although right now I think it's on sale for like $600, $500 on some sites. It's a pretty good deal. It's so worth it. You get the big, warm richness that compares to that of a Neumann. Worth mentioning that if you want a more natural sound at a similar price range, the Shure KSM32 will give you that. It may sound boring compared to the LA320, but everybody that's been doing this for a while knows that oftentimes boring is easier to work with. Now for honorable mentions, this mic right here, the Roswell Pro Audio, K60 Mini K60. No, fuck. How am I confusing my own mic? Holy shit. The Roswell Pro Audio Mini K87. It's like $500. Well, at least this version is custom grill, custom body. Pretty good mic. Now, before moving to the last category, it's worth mentioning that the way you position yourself, the pop filter, and the way you level yourself before recording, and also your performance when recording, can result in either great recording or a poor recording that even when recorded on a Sony C800G, no mixing will fix. Now, last but not least, these are some of the most sought out pieces of equipment when you think about building your home studio, and that's studio monitors. Studio monitors come in different sizes, from perfectly average Goliath size 3-inch speakers to decently big 5-inch, 7-inch speakers, in some cases more. Generally, the smaller in size, the more the more affordable they are. However, there are certain trade-offs to getting smaller speakers. For one, they typically don't have as strong of a bass response compared to the bigger Bros, and they have lower SPL in most cases. So in other words, SPL, try to explain it, they require more power to produce the same amount of volume as higher SPL speakers, if that makes any sense. They are, however, suitable for smaller rooms and or spaces. Now, when it comes to super budget options, there's really none that stick out, unfortunately, unless you go the pre-owned route, which for studio monitors is honestly recommended if you're on a tight budget. So to dive right in, for smaller size monitors, you can't go wrong with the Audient Audio D3Vs. They come in at $300 the pair. They can fit almost anywhere. They have a really flat frequency response. They have a really sexy white color. But of course, since they're small, they can't get as loud as bigger speakers. If you want to spend a bit more money though, the Audient Audio T7Bs are really great. It's the ones that I own and plan to use for a while, to be honest. They come in at $500 the pair. The T7Bs, along with the D3Vs, worth mentioning is that they have their famously rated ribbon tweeter. These help give the high-end more clarity and detail. At least in my opinion, or maybe because I've gotten used to them, I feel like they have a solid bass response. With these, there's really not a reason to upgrade anytime soon, and when you do upgrade, the only, I guess, worth upgrade is a pair of speakers that come in at like $1,000 or more, right? To be honest, with studio monitors, I haven't had, if I'm being just straight up honest with you guys, with studio monitors, I don't have really that much experience.
Oh, you see this guy? See this guy?
Just because I,
Number one bullshit guy.
Dude, like I'm set with these for right now. Again, if I plan to upgrade, I'm planning on spending more than $1,000, and honestly, I don't know if I'll spend more than $1,000 right now. So that was it for all the equipment you need, but I want to follow up with miscellaneous accessories you will end up having to get at some point. So hang out for a few minutes or don't. I don't know, to be honest, my mouth kind of hurts. I haven't talked this much before. So the following things are the things that you're going to end up needing sooner or later. The most important are hard drives or SSDs. I'd go for SSDs since they are faster, but also means they are more expensive. When it comes to external storage, your computer only has such limited space for plugins, samples, sound kits, so this is a must buy. When it comes to how many you need, I recommend getting 2. The reason being is for your data protection. Losing your data because you don't have a backup is insanely frustrating, and I don't even wish it on my ex. Probably because I still love her. So get 2. One for data backup and the other for all your content files. The next accessory I recommend, especially if you're on Mac or laptop, are docking stations or USB hubs. These typically do the same thing kind of, but docking stations come with their own included power supply. So this can help power more peripherals like monitors, studio monitors, mouse and keyboards, basically everything in your studio with just one cable. The next accessory, which I have connected right now, which I'll show you right now, is an iLok dongle. This looks like a USB drive, but it's much more important than that. Focus, 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 focus. Boom, that right there. Once you start... Oh, shit, why it get so dark? Fuck. Damn. Alright. Can you guys excuse the poor video quality from now? Okay, there we go. Holy shit. Fucking ugly. Once you start... Fuck.
3 hours later.
Once you start to get more plugins, most of them will require to store its license key into the iLok or an iLok cloud. I go for the dongle pretty much every time since the cloud requires internet access. Make sure not to lose this though. They are pretty pricey for being a fucking dongle, and it's just a headache. The next accessory are cables, not just XLR cables and other cables needed for music purposes, but an Ethernet cable. This is really underrated. An Ethernet cable will help you upload beats faster onto YouTube or BeatStars, and they can also help reduce download times from when installing plugins significantly. The next accessories are extra dongles. These are anything like a female type A to type C or vice versa. It's the one I had connected to my dongle, right? To my iLok. You never know when these could come in handy. And they're just fairly cheap for like $3. You get like a 5-pack on Amazon or something. To end it off, power strips are also severely underrated. Just like with ports in your computer, the more stuff you need to power connect, the more outlets you need. This is where those power strips come in handy. Make sure you get one with surge protection to protect your equipment from any unexpected misfortune. Well, that's it for this video. Hopefully it's not too long. It took a while to get my notes. I didn't go over plugins or sound kits since that's just another topic for another day. And plugins are just another rabbit hole in the music scene. I plan on making a video about what plugins I'd buy if I were to start again. But anyways, I digress. Like or dislike Sub or Don't Soap. Thanks for watching.